Welcome to Thriller Recaps. Today, I am explaining the movie The Gangster, The Cop and the Devil, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this. Two men stopped in the middle of the road. One of them, seemingly drunk but still aware of his surroundings, asked how the other man was able to drive so fast at night. He began to take pictures of the man's car since it had hit his own car. Before he could get enough pictures, the other man attacked him and stabbed him multiple times, killing him in his car. The attacker then drove off, as if nothing had happened. In August 2005, there was traffic congestion due to another murder. Tae-suk got out of his vehicle and saw some thugs. He confronted them and walked into a building, but was stopped by the thugs. One of them tried to bribe him, but he got angry and beat him. He then managed to walk into the building, which turned out to be a casino. As he walked deeper into the building, trying to investigate Dong-soo, another gangster and seemingly the leader of the gangsters, he attacked one of the workers at the casino. Dong-soo came out and called Tae's boss, reporting that Tae had come back again. He blamed the boss for being careless, even after receiving his monthly pay from him. The boss promised to take care of Tae. Meanwhile, Tae, still with the worker, got a call from his boss, but he hung up. He forced the worker to drive him to the crime scene and handcuffed him to his bike. He checked on the man, who had been killed the previous night, and asked if the victim had been identified. He noticed a scratch behind the vehicle and alerted his co-worker. Dong-soo met with his rival gang's leader at a restaurant. They soon had a disagreement, while planning to split territories, but it favored neither of them. Dong-soo ended up removing one of his boy's teeth and punching him in the face for interrupting their conversation. At the station, Tae and his co-workers learned the identity of the dead man and discovered that he had been stabbed by an amateur. One of them suggested that it might not actually be an amateur, as no proof was left behind and the victim's wallet was stolen. They decided it might be a robbery homicide. Tae pointed out that they had 3 different cases with the same killer. He showed proof and suggested that the same knife was used for all the murders, but the others didn't believe it, thinking it sounded unrealistic. Tae insisted they be in trouble if they didn't find the murderer soon. As he kept talking, his boss attacked him for what he did earlier and asked if he was so desperate for a promotion. Tae got angry and left. Meanwhile, Dong-soo was on his way back home. He insisted on driving himself, as he wasn't drunk. The killer from earlier hit his car. Dong watched as the killer got out of the vehicle and went out to confront him. The killer apologized, and Dong told him to go as his car was still fine. The killer began to argue that he had hit Dong's car and immediately attacked Dong as he turned his back to walk back to his car. A fight ensued, and they both ended up getting injured. The killer escaped after knocking Dong down with his car. Dong was rushed to a hospital, admitted, and operated upon. Dong's henchmen assumed that the crimes were committed by a rival gang, so they launched an attack against them. Meanwhile, the killer, now alone in a secluded spot, began to tend to his wounds in his car. Dong regained consciousness in the hospital. He then went to a dog center and killed the security guard there. Dong received a visit from one of his goons. He told him that the attack wasn't from the rival group because he didn't recognize the guy, and the attack felt purposeless and emphatic. The goon, confused, asked who else would try to attack him. Dong wrote a description of the killer's car and asked him to locate the vehicle. Tae visited Dong and initially mocked him over the incident. Dong called him incompetent, saying bad things kept happening to model citizens. Tae then asked Dong to tell him everything that happened the previous night. Dong claimed he would catch the killer faster, and Tae asked him again for information. Dong lied, saying he tripped and hurt himself. Tae pretended to believe him and sarcastically warned him to be careful. He left the hospital as Dong watched him go. Tae drove to a parking lot, where he found Dong's vehicle. He realized the car had the same scratch as the one he had found earlier in the investigation and identified the other car as a white sedan. He felt glad that he was right after all. Dong received a visit from his rival, who mocked him over the incident, saying he made a mess just after the contract was signed. The rival told Dong that if he had been behind the incident, Dong wouldn't be alive, but he wanted to know who caused the accident. Tae returned to work to give his boss feedback on what he had discovered. His boss thought it was ridiculous, but Tae insisted he could solve the case. He told his boss that Dong had been attacked and had to undergo surgery. He further noted that the killer wasn't involved with the gang, as no one would want to attack a gang leader, and he was sure it was the serial killer. His boss warned him not to get involved and claimed it was a gang problem, so he would assign it to another unit. Tae warned his boss not to cover for Dong. This angered his boss, but he calmly said Dong was the victim, and they couldn't arrest him for not reporting a crime. Tae noted that if they didn't get Dong in time, he would kill the killer, as his men had the capability to find the killer faster than the police, and moreover, Dong had seen the killer's face. At night, the killer struck again, killing another man. Meanwhile, Dong described the man he had seen earlier as a sketch artist. He handed the picture to his trusted goon and instructed him to find the killer before the police did. The killer left the scene, taking the vehicle of the man he had just stabbed, not realizing there was another man in the back seat. The man came out, and the killer began to laugh maniacally and drive carelessly. At the casino where Dong and his goon ran their arcade, Tae arrived and began to send everyone out, declaring he was shutting it down. He then asked for the boss. Tae met with Dong again and persuaded him to give him the identity of the man who had stabbed him. He also asked why he thought the man attacked him. Tae warned that if they didn't find the killer soon, many more people would die. He continued, saying Dong should hand the killer over and continue being a gangster, calling it a win-win for both of them. He promised to lock the killer up for good if they caught him. That night, while with one of his goons, Dong learned that rumors had been spreading since his attack and that his rival's boys had been moving into his turf. He also learned that the killer's car had been found and brought back, as it seemed the murderer had discarded the vehicle. There had been a murder around the area where the car was dropped. His goon showed him a knife they'd found in the area. Dong told him to hold on to the knife. At work, Tae received a call from Dong. Dong asked him about the recent murder and if he knew anything about it. He told Tae that the killer did it, and they'd found his car near where the murder happened. Dong met up with Tae at his home, where they discussed the killer. Dong said his reputation had been tarnished since the incident. He promised to chop the killer into pieces once he got him. He gave Tae the killer's car keys. Tae wanted to arrest the killer to connect him to the other murders and get a promotion. Tae and Dong decided to work together. Dong agreed to provide manpower and cover expenses while they shared information and helped each other out. They planned that whoever caught the killer first would get to keep him. Tae agreed to this and was shown the sketch of the killer. Dong showed Tae that he had been recording all their conversations, saying he needed it for insurance. Tae got annoyed and broke the device used for recording, but Dong revealed that a security camera had captured everything Tae had done so far. This aggravated Tae, who saw the camera and threatened to lock Dong up when it was all over. That night, Tae met with two of his colleagues, and they began to work together to uncover the identity of the killer. Meanwhile, Dong called his goons and informed them he had made a deal with Tae. Tae told his colleagues that their boss, the chief, was protecting Dong, and if they were to work together, the chief would get into trouble too. He told them Dong had found the killer's car. Dong planned to use the cops and then discard them, while Tae planned to use the gang to catch the killer and then move in to make the arrest. Tae and his men went to the killer's car and scanned it for prints or hairs they could use to track him. They continued investigating the killer, making sure no one knew about it. Dong also continued his investigation, and Tae fed him information. Dong ordered his right-hand man, Kwon Oh-sung, to kill his rival, Hyo, with the killer's knife, which already had the blood imprints of the killer's victims. Tae met a lady and asked her to look into the hair and other DNA evidence. She agreed to help. She and Tae then went to Hyo's place, where they found him dead. They realized his case was strange, as the killer had left the weapon for them to see. At work, Tae and his colleagues were blamed by the chief for being incompetent, as their attitude had caused the death of a gang leader. Tae learned that the DNA samples he sent contained the DNA of the recently murdered victims. He was confused, and his fears were confirmed. One person had committed all the murders. He immediately realized that Dong was behind the death of the gang leader. He went to confront him, and it resulted in a fight, with Tae ending up injured. Dong called the chief and reported Tae, confirming Tae's belief that the chief had been working with Dong. Tae asked why Dong killed his rival, but Dong didn't answer. Instead, he told Tae that nothing had changed and that they would still catch the killer together. Tae promised to investigate Dong privately after everything was over. The whole town learned that all the killings had been committed by one serial killer, and the police were working hard to find out who was responsible. They also claimed the thug's death was the killer's fault too. At work, Tae was blamed for not handing over the case from the beginning, and the case was transferred to the major case squad. Tae wasn't ready to give up the case but said nothing. At Hyo's burial, Dong was seen with other attendees eating and drinking. The killer was also. Dong recognized him but couldn't attack him, so he kept his eyes on him. However, he lost sight of the killer when he received a phone call. The killer approached Hyo's right-hand man and told him that Dong was responsible for Hyo's death, which angered the right-hand man. In the morning, when Tae and Dong checked the killer's car for evidence, they were attacked by Hyo's right-hand man and his henchmen. A fight ensued, resulting in the death of Hyo's right-hand man and injuries for both Dong and Tae. Dong got Hyo's right-hand man buried and cleaned up the scene. The killer, having murdered his next victim, was driving freely in the new victim's car. Tae was at his office when the chief noticed a bruise on his face. Tae didn't reply and was assigned a kidnapping case. It turned out the killer had pretended to kidnap his latest victim to extort money from the victim's wife. Tae didn't want to accept the case, feeling the serial killer case was more important. He fought with the chief over this but finally accepted the job. Tae met with the victim's wife and asked her to take the money to the designated drop, hoping to find the kidnapper. He discovered that the killer was the kidnapper. A chase began, but the killer escaped, proving to be smarter than them. They returned to the spot and asked the owner why she collected the bag from the victim's wife. She told them nothing useful and mentioned that the man gave her money. She finally mentioned he drank something too, and they asked for the bottle of the drink he took, but it had been taken to a plant for recycling. They began to search for the bottle. After forensic tests on the bottle, Tae learned their suspect was actually a missing person. Tae learned more about the man from his wife, who claimed he had been missing for 3 months. Tae accessed the man's room and realized it was indeed the killer they had found. He immediately told his men to get a recording of the killer and check it out. Tae informed Dong about his discoveries and sent him a photo of the man he had found. Dong met with Tae and his team, and Tae provided more information about the killer. They all began planning how to catch the killer. Police were sent all over the city in teams with instructions to catch the killer by any means necessary while keeping a low profile. Dong also sent his men out to find the killer. One morning, Dong gave a student an umbrella as it was raining, trying to help her. Tae arrived at the scene and warned the girl not to accept items from strangers, saying Dong was a thug. The girl called Tae a thug and got on a bus to school. Tae continued working with the police, and Dong continued with his men. They were all at a bar, trying to ease their work stress, when news about the girl from earlier came up. It was reported that she had been murdered, and Dong's umbrella was found at the scene. Seeing this, the whole gang began working again, searching for the killer. They looked into bars, karaoke spots, and every hotel. Suddenly, Dong's right-hand man told them to cancel the search party and bring only 2 men along. Dong and his men found the killer in his car and tried to ambush him. The killer, realizing something was wrong, smartly drove past them. A car chase began, and the killer was able to escape again. Dong didn't give up and chased the killer frantically, hoping to catch up with him. Dong successfully caught up with the car, but the killer had escaped. They found him running and split up, hoping to find him. The killer managed to kill Dong's right-hand man. This enraged Dong, who smartly used the blood from his knife to track him. Dong followed the killer into a karaoke club and searched for him. He finally found the killer in the bathroom and began beating him until he passed out. Dong dragged the killer out of the club and called Tae to tell him he had the killer. Tae asked for the location but wasn't given one. Tae then instructed his men to find Dong's location since he had the killer. The killer regained consciousness in Dong's car but was seemingly helpless. He only told Dong that he was starving. Dong took him to a warehouse, where he tied him to a chair. The killer showed no remorse as Dong beat him up. Dong promised to chop the killer into pieces. The killer then taunted Dong to kill him and smiled as Dong placed a knife on his neck. Before Dong could chop off his head, Tae crashed his car into the warehouse, hitting Dong. Tae apologized to the already unconscious Dong, and then advanced to arrest the killer. We learned the killer's name was Kang Kyung-ho. He was brought to the station and introduced as the serial killer. News of Kang's arrest spread quickly. Dong, who had now recovered, watched all of this, feeling he had lost. Unfortunately, there was no evidence as the killer refused to confess, even after his knife was brought to him. He finally spoke, convincing everyone that he was acting. In court, the killer initially seemed to prove his innocence and mocked everyone. However, Dong testified against him and proved him guilty when scars caused by Dong in self-defense were found on the killer's body. Before that, Tae had met with Dong, telling him to turn himself in and testify against the killer. The court sentenced the killer to death, and Dong was also arrested for his criminal activities. Finally, Tae was promoted, and Dong was transferred to the same prison as the killer. He had requested that in exchange for his testimony against the killer, which led to his own arrest. At the end of the movie, while the killer was taking a shower, Dong shut off the water and approached him with a smirk and a rope in his